Wuhan, the Chinese city where the novel coronavirus first emerged back in December, will have its quarantine lifted within 2 weeks. According to the World Health Organization, the US has the potential to become the new global epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic. The Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games will be postponed due to the novel coronavirus pandemic. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, I'm Katrina Goss. Wuhan, the Chinese city where the novel coronavirus first emerged back in December, will have leave the city. The news was confirmed through a statement posted on the Hubei provincial government's website on Tuesday. Several other cities in Hubei province will also resume transport services on Wednesday as part of nationwide efforts to revitalize the economy. The Hubei Health Commission will become the new global epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic. Over the past 24 hours, 85% of new COVID-19 cases were reported in Europe and the United States, according to W.H.O spokeswoman Margaret Harris. Of these, 40% were reported in the United States. More than 46,000 cases and 530 deaths have been reported so far in the US, with more than 20,000 cases in New York State alone. The WHO spokeswoman noted on Tuesday that the US could soon see a surge in the number of cases comparable to that seen across Europe. Earlier, US President Donald Trump admitted his government was experiencing difficulties in securing life-saving medical equipment. And meanwhile, US President Donald Trump declared on Monday that social isolation measures applied in the country due to the COVID-19 outbreak could be relaxed in a matter of weeks, claiming that this cure could be worse than the disease itself. Trump said he planned to pull the US economy out of its coronavirus-induced slumber in a matter of weeks and refused to commit to following the advice of his hand-picked health experts when reassessing guidelines on social isolation. He even claimed, without offering any evidence, that the economic downturn caused by continuing the social isolation could result in more deaths than those related to the novel coronavirus outbreak in the US. Trump stated that the US wasn't built to be shut down and insisted that America will soon again be open for business.
You can't keep it closed for the next, for years. Okay, this is going away. We're going to win the battle, but we also have, you have tremendous responsibility. We have jobs, we have people get tremendous anxiety and depression, and you have suicides over things like this. When you have terrible economies, you have death, probably, and I mean definitely would be in far greater numbers than the numbers that we're talking about with regard to the virus. So we have an obligation, we have a double obligation.
In the meantime, the statements of Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick have gone viral on social media as he suggested that older people should be sacrificed for the sake of the economy. He made the statements on a Fox News TV show.
My message is that let's get back to work. Let's get back to living. Let's be smart about it. And those of us who are 70 plus, we'll take care of ourselves, but don't sacrifice the country. Don't do that.
And our correspondent in the United States, Jorge Gestoso, brings us more details on the novel coronavirus outbreak in the US.
Thank you. The coronavirus still a big threat in the US. It's growing exponentially. We're talking that it's getting closer to 50,000 cases proven and over 600 deaths at this very moment. Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York, where is the largest cases in the country, mentions that it duplicates the amount of cases every 3 days, and he says that most definitely there is a crisis. He said, before you could think that there was a freight train. No, this is a bullet train that is coming against us, and most definitely the country is still not equipped or unequipped to face this type of crisis. He said that they need ventilators, they still need masks, they still need gowns, and they still need a lot of hospital beds. The convention center in New York City, the J.J. Habits, has been transformed in an emergency hospital and is going to be including about 1,000 beds in order to treat coronavirus cases. In the meantime, President Trump is trying to at least evaluate the possibility to restart the economy as soon even as next week. He said yesterday in Twitter, we have to be careful that the cure is not worse than the situation itself. Also, this morning he tweets that the people in the country wants to go back to work, and that is a big conflicting versions of what the president believes that could be the solution of this crisis, and some of his best advisors, and even Governor Cuomo, that says that you cannot put a price in order to save lives. In the meantime, here in Washington, the Congress is still debating the stimulus plan, about $2 trillion, in order to precisely help the most vulnerable people in the country, but also the huge corporations that mostly the country is at a full stop. And the case of the minority leader of the Senate, we're talking Charles Schumer, has mentioned that he believes that sometime today they could reach an agreement and propose the signing of the bill to the president. So far, this case is still very much a country totally still. At least 1/3 of the Americans are in their homes, and the closings are getting more strict. For example, in Puerto Rico, the order is that any person coming from any part of the world, the US included, is going to be put in 14 days quarantine. The same thing said the governor of Florida. So the situation is very fluid, but the crisis is extremely, extremely grave. We get back to you now.
The COVID-19 death toll in Italy rose by 743 in one day, reversing a declining trend in fatalities observed over the past 2 days. The total death toll in Italy is now 6,820. According to Italy's Civil Protection Chief Angelo Borelli, the number of COVID-19 cases is probably 10 times higher than official numbers, and as many as 640,000 people could be infected in the country. Medical experts confirm that Italy has focused its testing only on people showing severe symptoms in areas with high epidemic intensity, like Lombardy, Emilia-Romagna and Veneto in the north of the country. Thus, it is difficult to know the real numbers. Borelli noted that there could be 10 non-recorded coronavirus cases for every 1 confirmed. He also called for urgent action to secure intensive care equipment and face masks, stressing that national production of these essential items must begin as soon as possible. And the situation in Spain is rapidly worsening as the novel coronavirus death toll in the country jumped by 514 in a single day. Spain is the worst affected country in Europe after Italy, while official figures show that 2,696 people have now died in the country and close to 40,000 are infected. Meanwhile, cases have been mostly concentrated in Madrid, Catalonia and the Basque Country, but the number of cases is growing in other regions. The police criticised irresponsible people on Tuesday, including some who have left hospitals without being formally discharged. In the capital of Madrid, meanwhile, the municipal funeral home has stopped collecting COVID-19 victims because of a lack of protective equipment. A group of French researchers has announced successful results of experimental treatments for the novel coronavirus, a pandemic that is currently affecting more than 170 countries and territories. Professor Didier Raoult, director of the Mediterranean Institute of Infection in Marseille, published a video in which he explained that COVID-19 patients who were treated with the drug chloroquine had seen a rapid and effective speeding up of their healing process and a sharp decrease in the amount of time they remained contagious. Chloroquine is normally used to prevent and treat malaria. France has reported almost 20,000 confirmed COVID-19 cases and 860 deaths. Russian President Vladimir Putin visited a hospital in Moscow's Kurmanaka district on Tuesday, where novel coronavirus patients are being treated. During the visit, Putin praised doctors for their professionalism, noting they were working like clockwork. After a meeting with the hospital's chief doctor, Putin donned a yellow suit and mask to enter the area where COVID-19 patients are being treated. Russia, which shares a border with China and has a population of 144 million, has so far reported 495 cases of the coronavirus, but no fatalities. The country has gradually tightened restrictions, halting cultural and sports events and closing schools and fitness clubs. Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin noted that other Russian regions should tighten anti-coronavirus measures, even if they do not have a high number of cases. More stories coming up after this short break, so don't go away. Welcome back. Latin America and the Caribbean has seen 88 deaths due to the novel coronavirus outbreak in the region, while the number of cases has increased to over 6,000 people. Colombia has reported 306 COVID-19 cases and 3 deaths, while 6 patients have recovered. Meanwhile, Venezuela reported 84 cases and 15 recovered patients. Guyana has 20 confirmed COVID-19 cases, while Ecuador reported 9 new deaths on Tuesday, bringing its death toll to 27. Meanwhile, the number of confirmed cases rose to almost 1,000, while health authorities reported that 3 patients had recovered. In the meantime, Peru has almost 400 cases, while Chile and Brazil continue to have the highest number of infected patients. Brazil has reported almost 2,000 COVID-19 cases, while its death toll has risen to 34. Chile has 900 confirmed cases. Cuban authorities on Tuesday confirmed 8 new cases of COVID-19 for a total of 48. An emergency field hospital was inaugurated in Crema, Italy this Tuesday, where members of a Cuban medical brigade will provide support to local hospitals. The brigade includes both doctors and nurses and arrived in Italy over the weekend to help contain the spread of the novel coronavirus in the European nation. Present at today's inauguration were local authorities and regional officials of Lombardy, the hardest hit region of the country. Lombardy is home to 46% of the more than 59,000 confirmed COVID-19 cases and 68% of the nearly 7,000 fatalities reported in the European country. And Cuba is also sending a medical brigade to help fight the COVID-19 virus in Dominica and testing activities. The Cuban brigade consists of 25 nurses, 5 doctors and 4 lab technicians who will arrive in Dominica on Thursday. Thousands of people across Brazil joined a new wave of pot-banging protests on Monday evening, demanding the resignation of Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, who continues to fail to adopt effective measures to contain the COVID-19 epidemic. On Monday, the death toll in Brazil rose to 34, while the number of confirmed cases was almost 1,900. Local media reported that the protests reflect the population's rejection of Bolsonaro, who has criticised several state governors for declaring quarantine measures to halt the spread of the virus. Meanwhile, local gangs have posted messages across the favelas in Rio de Janeiro ordering residents to respect an 8 p.m. curfew or face the consequences. Civil defence sirens sound 3 times a day in many areas across the favelas, asking residents to self-isolate. Brazilian airports continue to operate without establishing any new check measures. Although some state governors have attempted to close entry points, Bolsonaro has banned any such moves. On Tuesday, Mexico announced school closures until next month, as well as a ban on events of more than 100 people and a suspension of some activities as it enters the second phase of its novel coronavirus prevention plan. The Mexican president noted that despite the economic crisis provoked by the pandemic, the country has strengths to face the challenges. The Mexican defense minister confirmed over 16,000 personnel will be deployed to combat the outbreak. Meanwhile, Deputy Health Minister Hugo López-Gatell explained during a press conference on Tuesday that Mexico has taken timely action which has prevented the virus from rapidly spreading. Classes will be suspended until April 19th, while workers who have to travel long distances to their jobs should stay at home. The government said it was implementing the measures in response to an increase in non-imported COVID-19 cases. Mexico has announced 367 COVID-19 cases and 4 deaths. Vice President for the Economy of Venezuela, Tarek Al-Assami, announced a series of measures to tackle the global economic catastrophe brought about by the coronavirus pandemic. The measures include protecting Venezuelan workers from being laid off, with a decree ensuring job security until December 31st of this year. The Vice President also announced a plan to support small and medium businesses that are forced to suspend their activities by covering employees' salaries for a period of 6 months. Meanwhile, he stressed that the local supply and production committees, or CLAPs, are to continue distributing key foodstuffs to the population.
We have already approved the necessary resources to guarantee the distribution of 7 million CLAP until August of this year. At least until August of this year, we have already guaranteed both the investment of resources and the necessary acquisition of all the items that make up the CLAP, that are distributed door to door. It is important that the people of the world know this. It is a policy of delivering the essential supplies for Venezuelan families in their homes through grassroots organization, popular organization, the club. This is done periodically.
The governments of Venezuela and Mexico joined forces to repatriate citizens from the two countries on flights operated by the Venezuelan airline Conviasa this Tuesday. The plane and passengers underwent all security and sanitary measures to guarantee a safe flight home in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. 73 Mexican passengers were returned to Toluca from Venezuela, while more than 100 Venezuelans who requested a return flight home were repatriated on the same aircraft.
This exchange that we are doing with the help of Conviasa Airline allows so that Mexicans who found themselves in Venezuela and Venezuelans who have been grounded in Mexico can return. Thank you truly, and for us this is a gesture that we are thankful for, and we thank the Mexican people and government.
And we're taking one last break now, but stay with us for more. Welcome back. After weeks of uncertainty amid the COVID-19 pandemic, it has been agreed that the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games will be delayed until the summer of 2021 at the latest. The news comes after Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and the President of the International Olympic Committee, Thomas Bach, held a conference call on Tuesday morning where it was agreed that the best route forward was to postpone the Games. In a joint statement, the Tokyo 2020 organisers and the IOC said that the move sought to safeguard the health of the athletes, everybody involved in the Olympic Games and the international community. This is the first time in its 124-year modern history that the Games will be postponed during peacetime. A cargo plane arrived in Nairobi from Ethiopia, carrying Kenya's share of health kits and protective medical equipment donated by the Chinese Jack M.A. Foundation. Kenyan health authorities have confirmed 25 COVID-19 cases.
20,000 test kits from the Jack Ma Foundation and assorted personal protective equipment, which will quickly be able to deploy to our Emergency Operations Center, the isolation unit in Bagadi, and Kenyatta National Hospital, and the counties to be able to support more patients for COVID-19 care.
It calls for not individual or separate actions. We as Africa, we Ethiopia and Kenya as good neighbors, we should bring all our resources in the fight against this global and regional problem. His Excellency Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, has taken an initiative with Alibaba foundations to bring support to Africa.
China has sent aid to Serbia and Austria as part of its efforts to help the international community combat the COVID-19 pandemic. In Serbia, the government welcomed the Chinese medical team that suggested that the country start mass testing for COVID-19 within the next 48 hours. As of Monday, Serbia confirmed 3 deaths and almost 250 confirmed cases. Meanwhile, in Austria, 2 passenger planes carrying 130 tons of medical aid from China landed at Vienna airport. The supplies include surgical masks and protective suits that will be sent to the western Tyrol region on the border with Italy, which has been the hardest hit by the pandemic. Cuban cartoonist and filmmaker Juan Padrón died today in Havana, having been hospitalized for over a month. Best known for his famous cartoon, El Pidio Valdés, depicting a Cuban patriot fighting against Spanish colonialism, this Tuesday is a sad day for Padrón's numerous fans.
Juan Padrón created El Pidio Valdés in 1970 as a cartoon character and comic who became a superhero for Cuban children and a symbol of the fight for independence. El Pidio Valdés, his partner Maria Silvia, and his smart horse Palmiche turned out to be the stars of a series of cartoons and feature films that were also widely enjoyed by grown-ups. Several generations of Cubans learned about the struggles of Cuban independence fighters against Spanish rule and also the United States interest over Cuba precisely through the adventures of El Pidio Valdés. With humor, intelligent and short dialogues, Juan Padrón wrote, animated, directed and produced some of the most important animated films in Cuban history, including not only the story of Valdés, but other short animated films like Filminutos and the internationally renowned Vampires in Havana. Some of the phrases he wrote are part of daily conversations in Cuba, either about tragic events or funny moments. Padrón's stories are the epitome of Cuban resistance and patriotism. The news of his death was confirmed by Padrón's son, the filmmaker Jan Padrón, who wrote on Facebook, "We will remember you as the funniest, most humble and greatest human being that we ever met. Thank you for El Pidio Valdés, for the Vampires in Havana, and above all, for being such a kind and loving father and husband. Hasta la vista, compañero."
Arriba, caballero, que hay mucho machete por dar todavía.
And we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Katrina Goss and thank you for watching.